Welcome to the Aussie Game podcast, where we talk all things Australian football. It was the game that stopped the nation as schools came to a halt and the workforce did anything they could to take in the Socceroos clash with Paraguay on Friday. We knew a draw would be enough to progress to the knockout for the second successive World Cup, and that's the result we got, with a stalemate between the two sides. A credible achievement from Tony Popovic's side, who progressed out of a tough group and will now take on Egypt in the round of 32. Despite the achievement, there are still questions around the Socceroos as we navigate our way through the tournament, which we will go through tonight as we head into the knockout stages. Mopper, 16 teams heading home. The fans of those teams no doubt disappointed, but the Socceroos roll on.
Oh, absolutely. Significance of this occasion that we've achieved so far. When we first looked at this group a little while ago, obviously we're in this group of four teams that were all equal capability-wise and pretty close to the rankings, apart from probably Paraguay, who was slipped back in the 40s. But I think on the bigger picture, it is so important for Australian football that we did this milestone on this occasion for the third time. I know it's a new system and a new format. I've been very excited about the new format, Chief. I've really enjoyed it. It's created so many moments. But I think for Australian football overall, that to everyone from Australia has just gotten behind this. The media, the people of the country, and it just puts more emphasis on our game. And when that spotlight is on the big picture of the Socceroos, so much attention and so much warranted attention is well deserved. And congratulations to the boys and all the staff over there. They've done a terrific job so far. And we'll look forward to breaking down tonight some opportunities and some bigger picture opportunities going forward as we navigate till Saturday morning at 4 a.m.
Yeah, the broadcast numbers were a record for a World Cup game on SBS, so no doubt that the nation got around the Socceroos. Yeah, as you said, their early start next Saturday morning for the Egypt game, so we'll see how committed everyone is and getting up, but hopefully everyone can get behind the boys. We're going to go through the game against Paraguay. To be honest, mate, there was not a lot to go through in terms of a spectacle. I think both teams going into that game knew what they needed. Not to say that both teams didn't try to have a go. There was definitely some shots on goal and some attacking options there, but certainly a bit later in the game, I think both teams a bit cagier, not wanting to take too many risks and knowing that a point would get them through. And as it turned out, we thought that there was a slim chance if the Socceroos lost that they might be able to sneak through, but it wouldn't have been the case. So very important to pick up this draw against Paraguay. The starting lineup, mate, there were 6 changes. Patrick Beach was in goals. Jordy Bos switched over to right fullback to cover for Jacob Italiano, which meant that Aziz Bayic came in on the left. Lucas Harrington swapped out Cameron Burgess's spot in that left centre back. Aidan O'Neill retained his spot. Jackson Irvine started next to him. And then our front three were Connor Metcalf and Volpato in the 10s, and Nestori Irankunda up front. So definitely a few changes there from Popovic from the USA game. Definitely needed to freshen it up from what we saw. But did you expect so many changes to come in?
I expected probably 3 or 4. I didn't expect 6. I think, look, we all knew of the sad news of Jacob Italiano, and it was a massive impact for Popper because before the tournament, we'd lost Lewis Miller just months before, and we knew the right back or right wing back would lack a little bit of depth. And we've seen a lot of central defenders play out there in the friendlies leading up to this. But to lose Jacob Italiano, the only natural right wing back left, it's going to put a big question mark on what he did. And he responded with obviously putting Bos on the right. Obviously, we know Bos can play anywhere, but it was obviously the right decision. And Azerbaijan come in at left back, natural left back again. And it just kept us, I guess, able to evolve with, transitioning out of defence. And we've been pretty probably a little bit not critical, but that we see that as an opportunity to hold the ball. So it's important to have those natural players to provide that width and transition. So I think that was important. I think Harrington just comes in because of his movement. I thought that was very important. I think Burgess strong in the air, but we needed that little bit of flexibility in our defence. We kind of Suter and Burgess, similar type of players. I was really happy with Jackson Irvine's involvement. I thought he would have come in for against America with his experience and obviously the ability to handle the occasion. But again, he wasn't used for America, but used for this one. And you've seen the impact that he had, his experience and obviously ability in those bigger moments to control it. He was really dynamic and really linchpin to that midfield and really helped Aidan O'Neill. And it was great to see Volpato start. I didn't think he'd start him in this one, but he did. It was a good, fresh approach. It was good to see him that he has the confidence to start him. And Irankunda obviously back in the lineup after missing America. So I think they're all warranted. Obviously, with the Metcalf, Volpato, Irankunda, it told me straight away that we were playing a little bit more pressing and a little bit more ball to the ground and ball to the feet in the higher third. But again, we probably just lacked that target person the way we attacked. But I think all the changes were warranted, and it's good to see that a lot of these players have got some minutes throughout the 3 matches.
Let's go through a few of the highlights from the match, mate. Started pretty quick, which has been something we haven't done for the first couple of games and even into the friendlies before the World Cup. So Jackson Irvine had a nice chance early. His right-footed shot was tipped over by the keeper, set up by Christian Volpato. So that was a nice early start that we had. Bos then had a shot from range towards the end of the first half, but unfortunately that one went straight at the keeper. Volpato had a shot punched away by the keeper just before half time. And then we also had one more just before the break with Jackson Irvine heading over. Pretty tough one. It came to him quickly and just couldn't contort his body quite the way he needed to. Bit of a slow start in the second half. Paraguay had a shot from distance and went straight at Beach. Irankunda finally found a bit of space in the 59th minute, but his shot from a tight angle went across the goal. Jordy Bos had two good chances late in the match to score, both pretty much created by himself, but he couldn't find the back of the net. And then hearts in mouths for Socceroos fans, the 93rd minute of the game when Paraguay had a shot at goal. Beach got down well and saved it. And then Yengi pretty much went down the other end and had a chance, but couldn't get the power on it. But geez, hearts in mouths, for when we knew we needed pretty much a draw and for Paraguay to open up that chance, and their player just didn't get the power on it. But Beach got down smartly, but as we said before, a narrow loss wouldn't have been enough to get us through. So we definitely needed a point. One thing that I noted through all those chances there, but everything came down the right. Everything good came down the right. And obviously that's a lot to do with Jordy Bos, as you said, providing that creative outlet down that side, and then him combining with Christian Volpato, which was really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Boss's presence has been vital in the first 3 matches. So it's just he's a great outlet to have, and you can see finally when he's in that final third, it's every Australian gets there excited, and you can see why as he keeps evolving through his development. It's fantastic to see. Look, it was never about really the game, was it? It was about the result for both countries. We're both low possession football teams. Paraguay was the lowest in South America, and we're not that much better possession based as you've seen the last 12 months. So it's all about the result. It played out that way. There were a few moments in this game, but most importantly for both countries is that they got what they needed, which was the 1 point. And as you pointed out very correctly, that only Senegal was the only team to advance with 3 points, and that was because of a +2 goal difference. So we've kept 2 clean sheets. We scored 2 goals in the first game, so we were at 0. So it just goes to show how important and vital that was. But I thought, well done to the Socceroos. We've had a lot of trouble with South American teams in the past. You could see the theatrics that they bring and the theatre that they bring as well. They're very difficult opponents, very hard to break down. And they were very tactical, weren't they, from the first minute? So I thought it was a good occasion for us under the pressure. I think we needed that, but we handled it quite well. I thought we were quite comfortable. Like you said, we were a bit loose at that last minute there with that chance. But overall, I don't think either team really threatened each other too much. And most importantly for all of us is we're going through to that last 32, which is very important when you looked at our group at the beginning.
I think they dealt pretty well with the theatrics of the Paraguay team as well. They, we could say kind of typical South American, the way that they went about what they needed to do. And I don't think it really got under the Socceroos' skin. They were pretty composed with what they needed to do throughout the game. So it was a good test for a few of our players that haven't been in those types of situations before. Just to go through the substitutes. So Aiden Hrustic came on in the 58th minute for Christian Volpato. And then late on the game, the 84th minute, Paul Okonengsler for Jackson Irvine and Teddy Yengi for Nestori Irankunda. So I actually called the Hrustic one at half time when I spoke to you, mate. I thought that he might just bring on that type of player just to calm things down a little bit to hold the ball. I thought that Hrustic did pretty well when he came on, and we know that at his best, he can offer a lot, but that was his first minutes of the tournament.
Yeah, it was important, wasn't it? You got to test these moments, and what a moment to test him. And Hrustic, he's had again plenty of experience. He's been in the Dutch league this year, and he was in Italy the year before. So again, just an experienced player to hold the ball up, and it was really good intent, wasn't it? Like we could have easily gone to more defensive, but it was still good intent to hold the ball. And you've seen those last chances in that final third of that match that Hrustic was lining up and connecting, and that's what we want to see, yeah, because that intent's still there, that mentality. I keep talking about making sure we evolve with that mentality. We keep like for like because it just keeps the balance of the team. So I thought it was a really good decision. I was a bit worried at first, but then once I seen him get on there, I thought I was pretty impressed with him. So he is a dangerous player, and he did create a couple of things late on.
Just looking at as you said before, we did maintain more possession than we've probably had throughout the tournament and in recent times as well. And it was a different to look at the Socceroos in that kind of situation. So knocking the ball around the back, I think Irvine and O'Neill were particularly important in that, being able to offer themselves and bounce the ball from the centre backs out to the wing backs or turn when they had some time and play it through the line. So it was a different look for the Socceroos, and we knew that Paraguay were likely to sit back, and even defensively for the Socceroos, we weren't sitting right back on our box like we had done for the Turkey game and the USA game. We're definitely pressing a bit higher. So it was good to see that kind of evolution in this Socceroos team. Whether that's going to be taken into the approach for Egypt, we'll have to wait and see. But I think we need to be able to show that against teams where we think we can dominate a bit more possession. And I think the more we do that, the more we get used to dictating that play. Because if we constantly go back into this pattern of sitting deep and then trying to get teams on the counter attack, when we do play lesser nations, we're not going to know how to play like that as a team.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think this is the inclusion of Irvine where it made hell of a difference, didn't it? He is such a good retainer of the football and good link-up play, not just in the back half, but the front half. And he wins a lot of ball, which turns the ball over. So Irvine again is experiencing that centre midfield and still allowed O'Neill to play his natural game. It's so important in transition. It was really good to see Irvine. Now, I thought he had one of his best games that we've seen for a while. He had stop start in the last 12 months, hasn't he, with his injuries? But again, he just goes to show how important he is in that pivot and connecting. He's such a class player. So great to see Irvine there. I thought it helped us evolve with that possession. And you're right about Paraguay. They did sit back. Like that's why they've got one of the stiffest defenses in South America because they don't really attack with the ball. They like to sit in behind and get you on the counter. But yeah, Irvine's inclusion there and backed up well by Paul Ocon again brings the technical player on. That would have been a tough move for Popper because I thought, with Irvine's form in that game, he was really outstanding. He really looked good. He looked fit. But Ocon again just settles the ball down again and technicality again helps us just retain that ball again. So it was a good move. And I thought that midfield was well balanced and connected really well.
I think Irvine, what he does too is he gets forward and as I mentioned in the kind of highlights that we ran through, he got himself in some good positions at times as well. So he does have that in him as well. He's kind of that. He was probably more of an 8 when he was a bit younger, and he kind of that box to box type midfielder. So he does have that in his game to be able to push through and support and get himself in the box with those kind of late runs as well. So yeah, I'd agree. It would have been a tough call for Popovic, and it's going to be an even tougher call looking to head to the Egypt game. You'd almost lock in Aiden O'Neill at this stage, and it's really a toss of the coin between Irvine and Ocon Engsler who goes in there. I just want to pick out a few more individual performances. Obviously, we've mentioned Boss. Harrington coming in for his World Cup debut at 18 years old just looked so composed on the ball. Just looked like he was kicking around with his mates in the park. Absolutely unbelievable composure, control on the ball, got himself out of some tight situations. I think he passing accuracy was around 90%, which we've become quite used to with him, but he was just outstanding. As his Beige, I thought it was okay, probably normal kind of Beige role, kind of got into some tussles and, sometimes he's not the cleanest player, but, very workmanlike performance. I didn't really like the way he blew up at Pat Beach late in the game when there was a bit of confusion there. I didn't think that was the best thing from an experienced player, from his young goalkeeper and his Melbourne City teammate as well. So probably keep that out of your game as is. But Volpato, probably not as impressive as the USA game, but as I said, linked up well with Bos on that right. And then Irankunda, I thought probably struggled a bit up front. I don't like him in that nine. I've said that before. I'd much rather see him coming through at the tens, but there's obviously either something going on with Toure, and maybe there's not enough trust in Yengi, but Irankunda was preferred there. I did read just before on the Football 360 article written by Aussie Scout that Irankunda seemed to be showing himself a bit more than Toure, sorry. So coming back and trying to get involved in the link-up play rather than playing off the shoulder. So whether that's something that Popovic is looking for, I'm not sure. But I think I don't like Irankunda there. I'd much prefer him as a 10.
I definitely performs better as a 10, that's for sure. It's just when you're isolated up against two central defenders, it makes it very difficult for his game, isn't it? He's dynamic laid off the ball, and he's one to take one of those central defenders out, but still having the attention of the 9 in the middle. And I think that's the connection piece, and probably why we haven't scored, I reckon, in the last couple of games, because both strikers, Toure in the first half against America and Irukunda in this game, were isolated. And it just doesn't suit him when he has to be that target man direct. Doesn't suit our players that are putting balls in the box either. We do need that target man. And when we break down Egypt, it'll be more important. It's going to be a huge decision, because if we're going to break down Egypt, we need a target man to do that. But again, we'll watch these tactics evolve. But like your comments around what you said around the game and the players, I think we all know Teddy Yangi's he's got some great experience in there. I think he's brought him in late in the camp, and I think he's gaining little bit by little bit and looking dangerous in the box. He could have put that one away, but didn't. But I think you're right about Harrington. Look, he's been prepped for this, hasn't he? He's been he's been starting the last 4 or 5 friendly games, and I think Popper's prepped him for this moment. And it would have taken a lot of leadership to put him in this moment, such a high pressure situation, to go, we need a clean sheet here, and he handled it well. And again, his development continues. He had good season at Brisbane Roar. He's had a good season in America, and he's had the lead up friendlies. He's really mature, and he just keeps going from strength to strength. So we'll watch this one develop as we go through. But again, it's the moment, isn't it? Getting these players at this age in these situations are gold, isn't it? You very rarely get exposed in these tournaments, don't you? And these pressure situations. And the more he gets in these moments, the better his football will be for the future.
Absolutely, mate. I love this stat that Football 360 put out today, that the Socceroos have put out 3 of the 5 youngest starting 11s in the World Cup by average age so far this tournament. The other 2 have gone to Cote d'Ivoire versus Germany and versus Curacao. But it just shows you what trust that Popov has put in this young team, and how exciting is this going to be for the future. And we know that these things don't always go in a straight line, and there's always kind of ups and downs in careers, but certainly very promising for the future. And Popovich has even said in his post-match press conference, why not this group now? They're good, playing with plenty of confidence, and we just like to see them go forward and do as much as they possibly can in this tournament. One of the veterans who will not be playing a further part in this tournament is Matt Leckie, who's been ruled out for the rest of the tournament, alongside Jacob Italiano, as you mentioned there before. It's probably right wing back and striker are probably our 2 thinnest areas on the entirety of the Socceroos squad. So the right wing back one is definitely a problem, but I think that Geordie Boss solution will remain for the rest of the tournament, I would expect.
Yeah, spot on, mate. And we wish Lecky all the best. And what a great career he's had with the Socceroos. And we'll be watch on and see what that looks like after the World Cup. And yeah, sad news for Jacob Italiano too, because he had a real opportunity, didn't he, in this World Cup? And he started the first two games, but unfortunately has gone down and will miss the rest of the tournament as well. So you're right about this right wing back. What do we do now? Boss is there at the moment with BH, and I guess at least we've experimented with a lot of players on that centre backs on the left and centre backs on the right. So you're probably looking at Guerrier, right wing back to back up. You've also got Sicardi who plays on the right, I guess, as a defensive option as well. So there is backup. It's just going forward. Just Boss is going to be huge, isn't he? He's really the outlet. We could get isolated at some point, but he's that good that hopefully we can just get through this situation.
Maybe we clone him and put him on both sides. Do you think anyone will notice?
He has got a brother, but he's not in this squad, my friend. And maybe in the years to come, when we talk about this next generation underneath, not just this one at this young age, there is a very good crop underneath this one as well. So I think it's very exciting for Australian football fans. And you're right, Popper said, why not now? Well, they've got the opportunity, haven't they? They've got around the 32 of Egypt. And look, that was extraordinary, wasn't it? Watching the scenes unfold with that many changes from Iran to Belgium to Egypt in the end. It was just unbelievable. So extraordinary finish to the group in Group G as well, what leads us to this path. So look, we're in good shape, aren't we? Like there is still a question mark on Toure. We know about that, and whether it's fitness, whether it's we're trying to manage him. Only the camp knows. He did come into the camp, didn't he, with a little bit of a cloud, and then obviously, but he started against Turkey, which he looked sharp, and then started against America. So is it managing the time? Is it managing the body? Maybe. We've heard Popper about 6 months ago, remember, say he's got a few injuries and we have to manage him. So maybe that's what we're doing, and maybe he'll get unleashed against Egypt.
So speaking of the striker situation, so providing, let's assume that everyone's fit, what would you do if you're Tony Popovic? How would you start? Let's expand that out into the front three. So striker and the two tens, how would you play it?
I'll definitely go back to the beginning against Turkey, and the most probably common combination that we've played in the last 12 months, which is the Toure, Irankunda, and Metcalf show. I think Volpato and Yengi has got enough time, enough experience to know if it does go in 120 minutes, we've got the confidence in them to come on and make a difference. And we've seen that throughout the tournament and the friendlies leading up to it. So I'd be confident of starting that three. Why not? You've got to start with a number 9 against Egypt because that's where they're the weakest. And I think Toure or Yengi has to start. If Toure's not 100%, then Yengi has to start because I've done some analysis and we'll talk about Egypt in a minute, but you have to start with a number 9. You've got to let Irankunda play his natural game if we want to see the best of him, and we can target Egypt's weaknesses if we do this. I think if we're going for that first half performance where we're going to start with like our 10s in the 9, then tells me that we're set up to block them again, which could be a risk. But again, it might work out if you can get to half time or 60 minutes still even, and then bring them on. There's both ways. But if it's me and I'm sitting down with Popper at breakfast, I'm going Toure, Irankunda, Metcalf. It's our most tried combination over the last 12 months, and it's worked every time when they're on the park.
Yeah, so we had a question from Noel who said, is it better to start a recognised centre forward such as Toure against Egypt? So there's your answer, Noel, straight from the word of Mopper. He would start either Toure if he's fit or Yengi up. So why don't you go through your analysis of Egypt, our next opponent, Mopper?
All right, so let's look back in history first before we get into it. And obviously, we've played Egypt twice. So a fair while ago, though, 19th of June, 1997, where we had a 0-0 draw. We won on penalties that day, so 4-3, so that's a good omen. Graham Arnold and Frank Farine and Charlie Yankos were some of the players that you'd recognise. The latest was in a friendly in 2010 in Egypt, which we lost 3-0. Actually, Mo Salah started this game, would you believe, and played. He didn't score, though, but we had Socceroos Neil, Kale, Jednak and Schwarzer. You'd all be very familiar with that. If we go into Egypt in a little bit deeper, let's go back to their African Cup. So they finished third in the recent African Cup this year. They beat Nigeria on penalties. They were knocked out by their nemesis, Senegal. And Senegal has destroyed Egypt's hopes and dreams for a long time. And Senegal, if you're familiar with their side, do a 4-3-3, and they always seem to get in behind them, which I'll bring up in a minute. A couple of attacking opportunities that we may have. So Senegal beat them in the semi-final again, 1-0. After obviously Egypt topped their group. If you look at the World Cup qualifying, they were undefeated. They had a weak group. They had 10 matches. They had 8 wins and 2 draws. They did score 20, only conceded 2, but didn't really have a strong group with Sierra Leone and some really teams that are nowhere near World Cup standard. Key players for them, obviously, we've got Mamouche, who has just been on fire. City's picked him up from Bayer Leverkusen, where he had a great year as well. He is the dynamic man. He's been starting up front. They did rest him last game against Iran. They put Trezeguet up front, but obviously they rested Mamouche for this occasion. Obviously, Salah's the big one. Injury cloud, though. He did come off with hamstring or calf. It's unknown the depth of that injury. He was iced up after that game. Obviously, former great of Liverpool, now moving on to an unknown club now. And they've got some home ground talent as well. Zico and Trezeguet, which we just spoke about, who have had strong tournaments with an assist and a goal. So they've really looked dangerous. That front four is very attacking. They can be exposed on, though, in behind, which we'll talk about in a minute. Couple of their qualities. So Africa, they're the strongest defense in Africa, and they really love to possess the ball. They love winning both possession counts against Iran and New Zealand, where they dominated the ball. And they matched Belgium as well, who just edged them for the ball. And they created a lot of opportunities, 19 shots and 14 shots on both occasions, and really took it to Belgium. Belgium are very lucky to get a draw out of this game, but they did have plenty of chances to Belgium. But Egypt love to possess the ball, and they love that front four, and they try to cover it with those 2 defensive midfielders, but they can get caught out in behind, and they are not strong in the air defensively, and they do suffer. And Belgium, if you watch that game, Belgium put them under all sorts of pressure with crosses and corners and set pieces. And even New Zealand first half got in behind them several times down the channel. And once again, they scored off a set piece and corner. And that has been Egypt's weak points. And we definitely have the capability to do both of these, especially with that 4-2-3-1 system they set up. That front four get very high, and that front four do not transition back very fast. So an opportunity there for Australia to exploit. In the lead up, they had a couple of games obviously to the World Cup. They had some good results. They had a draw against Spain. It was 0-0. They only had 10 men. So it just goes to show that they can match it with the best. And they were edged by Brazil 2-1. So, look, I think looking at Egypt overall, creating 19 shots against New Zealand, winning 3-1. Iran, we've seen how unlucky Iran was, but they did rest a few players, Egypt, but they still controlled the ball at 62% and 14 shots. So in each one of their games, they do possess the ball a lot, and they do love to attack across that front four. So we're going to have some challenges with that speed. It's going to be really important that we really focus on that transition. Aidan O'Neill, I think, is going to play a big part. I'm going to stick my neck out and say someone like Cam Devlin is going to probably be really important if we thought about him, because they're very fast in behind. And I don't know if Jackson Irvine, and I'm a massive fan of Jackson Irvine, I think we need someone in there with O'Neill protecting that back five, because of the speed that they possess. They play Zico and Asher and Salah, and they rotate so much, and the speed and the ball movement's just so good. And as I said, with Mamouche up front, they just cause all sorts of trouble. And that's their go-to for, with Asher on the left-hand side, Zico, and Salah all drifting across the tens and out wide, inverted and then outverted, and they really Mamouche is just a handful. So the speed of Mamouche, who's going to pick him up? Geez, it's going to be hard to track him, especially with that, because he's going to get in behind and try to use channels of Harrington and Sakati if they start. So, but like I said, Chief, defensively, I told you Belgium, Iran, and New Zealand both put balls in the box and they looked deceptible every time and they didn't handle it well. So there's definitely an opportunity to get balls in the box. And this is why the number 9, we need a target man, either Yengi or Toure. I don't care which one starts, because it's going to be important to have that presence up there, because they didn't handle either of Belgium's front third there at all, and they didn't really handle New Zealand as well. So the only difference was that they counter-attacked and moved the ball so quick that they got in behind both of those teams.
Thanks, mate. That's great analysis for the Egypt game. I just want to go to this comment and a few questions from Ozlock, and I want to touch on a few of the points you said as well. So, Ozlock has said Mamouche and Salah together are hard to contain. I feel the Socceroos will need 2+ goals to win. Potentially, that is going to be true. Also asked, is Toure being rested? We kind of covered that just before. And Ozlock would prefer that Ocon and Irvine play together for this game. I don't think we will see O'Neill being dropped from this starting 11. So I think it is probably between Ocon, Irvine, and maybe Cam Devlin, as you suggested, Mopper. I just want to touch on your point around Egypt being vulnerable on these set pieces, because I definitely think that is a way that we can get through Egypt. Of the 48 teams, they're 36th in XG conceded with 4.6, compared to Australia at 16 with 2.7. So while they are dangerous in attack, they do open themselves up at the other end of the field. And for me, our set pieces have been very, very poor so far in our 3 games. But if we can get this right against Egypt, and particularly if we're under pressure and we're out of possession a lot of the games, these set pieces could be absolutely crucial to unlock this Egypt defense.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been popping balls up, haven't we, rather than just clean hits in there and putting pressure on the defence. I can't believe that it's not just set pieces that Egypt struggle on, it's those crosses. And Volpato, you would have seen, obviously played a big part against America, popping those great balls in that second game, in the second half. Not so much in that more defensive minded third game, but it just goes to show though, at each time he was putting balls in the box, we didn't have a natural number 9 in there. So, look, I'm telling you, if you go back and watch the highlights of Egypt's 3 games, and you'll see even New Zealand down the channels carved them up in that first half. They probably should have been up 2-0, and they definitely can get that down those channels, because they play that front 4 and they don't transition at all. They rely on those 2 defensive midfielders to pick that ball up, which means there's always going to be space in behind. Mamouche doesn't get back, neither does Salah. Whether he starts or not, that I've got no doubt that they'll work their miracles and get him on the pitch somehow. But they don't come back. And if you can play Irankunda off somebody, or Volpato, or Bos, they'll definitely get in behind those channels, which will be a big, big point of transitioning against Egypt.
Yeah, and while Irankunda does very well in the air for his diminutive profile, having someone like the length of Matete Yengi in the box would just be a completely different handful for Egypt to deal with. Looking at where both teams are coming from in terms of how they lead into this game, obviously the Socceroos get an extra day's break with Egypt playing on Saturday, with the Socceroos having played on the Friday. But what else have you picked up in terms of how these two are going to come into this game?
Well, I think, look, the travel, they're both on opposite sides of the country. So they've both got about a 3-hour flight, about just under 2,000, around 2,000 kilometers out to travel. The weather's going to be big. Both sides of the state where they've been on, it's been pretty cool. It hasn't really been hot at all. It's been around 20, 22 degrees, and now they're going into a furnace in Texas, where the temperatures are high 30s. We're quite early in the game too, so we're going to see some sun. So there's going to be some challenges. Look, both Australia and Egypt are naturally, sun-given countries. It's going to be hot, and you'd think players locally and naturally would be able to handle it. But a lot of players play in Europe now, so to adapt to the conditions is going to be down to that medical team. It's still going to be a very difficult game for both parties. You can see this game going longer than 90 minutes, can't you? And could be the battle of the fittest, which I think I'd back us any time. Tactically, the only thing else I was thinking of is I know we put Bos in that right hand side to protect that right hand side, but you know what? If he was on Salah's side, the right wing where he attacks, that's where New Zealand got all their joy down that left hand side. So I don't know if Popovic is game enough to try to challenge himself to try to get into that space, because I tell you what, Belgium and New Zealand just carved them up down that left hand side, just behind Salah. It is a moment of weakness I see in that side. I'd love to see him do it, but I think with the injury that we got, has it cost us being able to do that? But I guess it's in the back of the mind we can always do it at some point if Salah does start and play.
Yeah, well, we know he's not going to track back, particularly if he's carrying an injury. So, yeah, we could definitely get him the other way with Geordie Boss and his engine and his speed. Let's look ahead to the Egypt game then, and let's look at maybe the approach that we're going to go in. I'm going to take a question from Spursman. He said, "This is a difficult match. Egypt are very organised defensively, play with a medium/low block, and very dangerous on transitions. Tactically, what changes do we make? It will be very difficult to get them on the counter. What do you make of that?"
Yeah, he's spot on. That front four is just a menacing front four. They've scored goals in every game. Look, this is why I know it's a bit of a far stretch. This is why I think Devlin comes into this with an equation, and I I don't know if Popper's thinking this, but you need someone around there with a little bit more nous and a little bit more speed to handle this movement around that in between the back five and the midfield. So look, I think tactically that would be a good move, and obviously the problem with right back, I'd be even game enough to play Gary at right wing back just to let Boss sit on that left hand side at some point during the game, because I definitely see Boss better used on that left hand side. I know we're excited and he played great down that right hand side, but it's not where Egypt is the weakest. It's the opposite side of the pitch. So look, tactically, that's what I would do. At some point, against this 4-2-3-1. I think we've got the advantage that you know uh, we've got the fitness behind us. So whether he uses that earlier or later, I'm not sure. But even Yangi and Toure, I think they're perfect fit to play Egypt. I think they'll really get in behind. We said Egypt's strong in defence, but they've conceded in every game, and there's pretty much the same way in every game. So it's quite obvious where they are the weakest. It's just whether we're good enough to get in there and be brave enough with the mindset to go at them. And that's going to be difficult because it's a bit cat and mouse, isn't it? Because their front four and our back five, who's going to blink first in this one? And that's what's going to come down to, who's going to be the bravest to get there. And Egypt's definitely brave, and they definitely leave themselves exposed. So there will be a moment. And if we're good enough and composed enough, I think we can take them.
Very interesting looking at their kind of average lineup as well. They're probably about 5 years older than us in terms of that. So, as you said, if the game does go past 90 minutes, does that go in our favour in terms of youth, in terms of getting around the pitch, or does the experience come into and the equation? If that's the case, it'll be very interesting to see if it does go past the 90 minutes. Do you think these are locks for the Egypt game? So Patrick Beach, Boss, whether he's right or left, Sakati, Sutar, O'Neill. Anyone else you're going to lock in as a guaranteed starter for this one?
I think the only change from the last game, I think you'll see Toure come in, or Yangi. I think that'll be the only change. I do think Devlin's a good move, but I don't know if they're going to use him to start. But I think at least that we've got that option. If that front four's troubling us and we hold on, we can make that tactical tweak. But again, like I said, I'm a big fan of what Jackson Irvine did in that last game, but it's going to be intriguing what he does with that midfield. He's swapped it up each time, hasn't he? And yeah, it's going to be very intriguing. But I really think Devlin's a fit for this game, but probably not on Popper's menu, I think, to start.
So if Toure comes in, is that Irankunda off the bench then for you?
No, I think Volpato will come off the bench. I think we'll use Irankunda to start. You got to go. You got to go for it. That Turkey game, like we said, it was the only time we've scored goals. It's the only time that we've looked strong going forward, and it's that combination of Toure, Irankunda, and Metcalf in the last 12 months that's been the most used. This is the moment. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't start him, although I shouldn't be surprised because of he comes up and he always surprises me with one or two. But why wouldn't you start your best three? I think Volpato, as we've seen him, he looks fantastic. He's going to be a very good difference at the end. I think he'd be able to create or hold onto the ball. I think we've exposed him enough to really put him in that furnace at the end.
Yeah, good point, mate. I say that Popovic's side is harder to pick than the lotto numbers. So we'll see what he goes with. This is a great question from Mark and something that we've discussed a lot of times as well. So if Australia go behind, what's the best tactical plan to play? Because we've said this time and time again, mate, when we do go behind or when we have gone behind, when we have gone behind in some of these friendly matches and these other matches that don't mean anything, we haven't really changed our approach. We haven't changed formation. We haven't really changed personnel too much. So if we are down 1-0, 20 minutes to go, what kind of levers do you think we should pull? And what do you think that Tony Popovich actually will do?
I would have thought what we did against America back in the friendly, but it was only a very short time that we did it. I think it was
For a
only
minute.
10, 15 minutes. Do you remember that?
No, a minute. A
Yeah,
minute.
was it a minute? That's
Yeah.
oh, okay. I would have thought that would have been on the menu at some point, but we haven't seen it. So I could only assume that it's push Boss further forward and allow hopefully Volpato, Irukunda, Toure, and Yengi to be on the pitch at the same time, but it just hasn't happened. Well, maybe behind the scenes it has, but we haven't tested it, so I'm not sure how that shape's going to look. Look, the natural way is you just play a back four, but we just haven't seen it in 12 months, so I don't know if we are going to see it. Maybe it's just Boss further forward and he's a bit more freedom, but I just hope we don't fall behind pretty much. I hope we can get out of the blocks and control this game and just use our strengths. But yeah, I'd be very worried, Chief, because again, we haven't looked like when we've fallen behind. We've created some moments in the second half against America, but nothing really threatening. So, and I can't say that anything in the last 12 months that we've changed tactically that would convince me otherwise, apart from what we've already done.
I think that's about spot on, though. I think we'd probably, stretch to a 4-2-3-1. It'd be Boss further forward. It'd be whoever the 10 is on that side tucking into the middle. Siccardi sliding out to right back. I think that's about as much as we could possibly hope for.
He might do a
Or we go
Graham
for two
Arnold,
strikers.
Chief. He might do Suter up front, Graham. Look how I'm telling you now. Watch the highlights against Egypt and Belgium, mate. They did not handle the target man up there at all. So you never
Yeah,
know.
it could be that. It could just be send him straight forward and play those remaining four at the back. So yeah, we will see. But let's hope, fingers crossed, that we don't get into that situation, and then we are playing in front, or we can at least send it deep into extra time and maybe even penalties. But it's very exciting to look forward to this Egypt game, and of course, if we are to progress out of Egypt, it's a likely Argentina rematch, who we also played in the round of 16 at the last World Cup. So that would be very exciting, a rematch with Messi and his mates.
Yeah, well, why not? Like, this is what we're here for, aren't we? You're going to come up against great teams and elite competitions. You're not going to go to round 32 or round of 16 without finding someone that's right up at the top of the echelon. And it'll be another great test for the young group. And let's just hope we can make it and just continue this wave that we've got from the country behind us. Because when the Socceroos and Matildas fire, the nation fire up, don't they? And the eyes on this game just gets more beneficial from every level. You've already seen, I think we've made 19 million from this already from a financial point. Now, when you look at the FIFA numbers, and I know this is not the show to talk about numbers, but you can see the importance of when a country is successful, what that means to the next generation coming through and the investment that you can make on it.
Yeah, definitely, mate. All right, let's have a look at a couple of the other games in round 32 because there's absolute blockbusters coming up. Any of those take your fancy, mate? There's a couple of big ones there.
Oh, Japan and Brazil is my highlight at 3 a.m. on Tuesday morning. What a game that's going to be! That's going to be a football fest. Haven't we seen some great games already? But I think it's just going to be. I think it's going to be classic football. And don't write off Morocco against Netherlands too. Netherlands haven't really impressed me much. Morocco, we've seen them in that Africa Cup. What happened? But they're a really good football team, and they'll give Netherlands a bit of a fright. Yeah, look, it's the rest of them are pretty even. I think, and some straightforward. I believe you expect some of the bigger nations just to flex their muscle now and really step it up a gear and send a few of these teams home. But yeah, Colombia and Ghana is obviously it'll be a exciting game as well down the bottom right at the end. It'll be great football. Watched a bit of Colombia and Portugal today, and that was just fantastic. So yeah, there'll be some good football. But I reckon the big guns are ready to flex their muscles, Chief.
Speaking of Portugal, the old boys of Portugal and Croatia going head to head, that one could be a bit interesting. What about Austria's reward for scraping through to the round of 32, playing up against Spain? That should be interesting as well. But I like your call about Morocco. I think they're definitely a good chance against the Netherlands. Cote d'Ivoire and Norway should be a bit of fun as well. And yeah, Paraguay, who finished third in our group, taking on the might of Germany. I reckon Japan's a decent shout to take down Brazil, which would be an upset, but we know how good this Japan team is. Speaking of countries out of the AFC, only us and Japan through from all the teams that qualified. So is that maybe a bit of an indication of where these other teams in Asia might be at? I think things can change a bit in a World Cup, and there's just these little moments that can either send your country home or have them scrape through. But pretty big statement there. Like we saw 9 of the 10 African teams make it through, but only 2 of the 8, I think, from Asia.
Yeah, I think Asia's probably at the tipping point where Africa were about 20 years ago, and that's building. And I think Asia will become more of a force like Africa did, when a lot more players are starting to get more better competitions, which they now have in their own domestic leagues. And I think Africa was on that tipping point probably 20 years ago. So, and you're seeing the growth of African football and you're seeing the growth of Asian football. But I think African football just got further in front 20 years ago when they had South Africa 2010. They had that uplift, and I'm sure with Qatar hosting that World Cup last time, that they'll just continue to build. I just don't think they've produced the elite, which a lot of Africa players have. Japan's definitely leading the pack, aren't they? They're masters of class. Yeah, you're right about that. I think they can knock off Brazil. That they could go deep, Japan, if they open that draw up, but they have a tough draw at the top with the rest of them coming through. But Japan's just outstanding on all levels, and Australia have a very exciting group at all ages from 20s up. So we're building nicely, and this could be an early taste of what's to come in the Asia Cup later on, which is not too far away. So we've flexed our muscles, haven't we? And the other Asian teams just haven't got close to some of the quality teams, and they've been exposed a little bit, and unfortunately, but. Yeah, that's the depth of the World Cup, isn't it? And it's been a great system, 48 teams. It's been well warranted that we invited more teams in because there hasn't been too many floggings, has there? The football's been quite good and quite competitive, and you've seen how close third group, those third places were. It was like, what about poor Iran? They like what a millimeter of a boot, and then probably 5 seconds from Austria today. Like, oh god, they'd be heartbroken, the Iran fans. And geez, they put up a great fight, didn't they? So, with everything that's going on, fantastic representatives of their country. So, fantastic job.
Yeah, well said, mate. Yeah, I was definitely skeptical of the 48 team World Cup, but haven't seen the blowouts as you said, and we've seen some little surprise packets come up, and probably some stars of the game that we otherwise wouldn't have seen. You think of the likes of Erling Haaland with Norway. I know they're kind of coming up with some of their talent, but there's a chance that we wouldn't have seen Haaland at a World Cup if we kept it at 32 teams. So yeah, that's exciting for those reasons, I think. Let's move away from the World Cup. to finish off, mate, because there's some news at home that we just wanted to cover. The Mariners, Central Coast Mariners, have new owners. So on the 23rd of June, the APL announced that Total Soccer Growth were the new owners of the Central Coast Mariners. Now, Total Soccer Growth are a privately owned international business, majority shareholder of English Championship side Queen's Park Rangers, and they also own a stake in Los Angeles FC in the USA. So positive news for the Central Coast Mariners. It's been months since they've had an owner, since the APL took over the license. Great for them to have some stability and to have ownership going forward. The thing is, Mopper, that's a bit of controversy because as part of the statement, they also announced that the ownership does not include the Central Coast Mariners women's team, who have only been back into the competition for the A-League women's competition for a couple of years. But I think this really sets a dangerous precedent for future owners coming in to say that they can pick and choose which parts of the club that they own, and they don't have to. I think taking on the women's team, it's a nice kind of whole of club look, and to almost defranchise the club, this great community club. I just don't think it's a good look for the Central Coast Mariners, and as I said, I think it sets a really dangerous precedent for owners coming in going forward.
Oh, your words are spot on, and this is trouble, I think, for Football Australia. They would not want this to happen. Not sure why the APL has allowed this deal if it didn't have a backup plan, and there still might be. So, look, let's hope, because not only did the women's game come out with a report, I think it was about 4 to 5 months ago, about what is needed and what required to go professional. You've got Canberra on the unknown territory, and now you've got the Central Coast Mariners women's team on the unknown. So the women's game is not only semi-professional, and now with two clubs possibly with no ownership or no direction going into next season. So I, I don't understand how we've rubber stamped this to go forward. I get that it's a fantastic opportunity for the Central Coast Football Club, but uh, the women are 50-50 in this. There's families, there's kids, there's, you know what I mean? That's the whole entity. You can't just, like you said, your words are spot on. You can't just pick, one part of your club, and we've allowed this somehow, and unfortunately that's the case. And can only hope that there's a backup plan in this that we're unaware of. But Football Australia have got some big damage control with the Women's League coming up, and the APL have got a lot to answer if they want to get this women's game off and running, because not only have Football Australia, announced that we've got debt and we can't reinvest, and now cost structures, and then now we've got two teams in the open, not sure if they've got futures. We can't have that off the back of a successful World Cup. That's just, it blightens the next step again.
One thing I will say, and I'm not excusing the decision, but if these new owners, Total Soccer Growth Holdings, were forced into a commitment to take on the women's team and they didn't want to, could they be in a position there where they do own the whole of the club, but they're just not going to invest in the women's program because they were forced into it anyway? So I mean, as I said, I would much prefer that they take on the whole of the club. And as I said, I think it's not a good look. We've all already seen some other clubs in the A-League men's competition not having women's teams, which I don't think is the right thing either. I think it should be part of the franchise model that each club must have a men's and a women's team, and anything else that the APL deems appropriate. But yeah, it's just not a good look. I really do hope that the APL has owners lined up. So at the very least, we have the people involved in the women's team have some job security, and the players can come back and be playing next season. That's the very least. But as I said before, just not a good look for the league. And I don't think it's the right thing going forward, because the next time a club license comes up, no doubt that this conversation is going to be had. They're going to try to pick apart the aspects of the club they don't want to take on. And I just think it needs to be a holistic approach. If we're growing the league, we're growing the clubs, we're growing the game, We need investors to be investing in the whole parts of the game and moving it forward.
Definitely. Well said, mate. And your words ring true and they hold some great value because we've seen what women's football has done, but we haven't fixed this root cause problem with women's football yet, and they're in dire need of, some urgent action with that report coming out only a few months ago. And look, I know Football Australia are probably hanging on this government, request that they've got with that massive infrastructure investment, but who's to say in times like this financially that that's going to go through? So I hope we're not hanging our hat on thinking that that's going to be the answer to the women's game because it needs to be from the ground up, not from the top down.
Yeah, absolutely agree, mate. The new owners have moved quickly. I will say on the men's side, obviously with Diesel Harrington and Storm Rue re-signing, and just an hour or so before we came on air, mate, they've also announced that Hayne Eames has signed a long-term deal. So, look, certainly the right owners in terms of investing into the club, and they've obviously locked up a few of these players, particularly Hayne Eames, on that longer-term deal. So they're looking to lock up young talent, obviously to be able to demand transfer fees when they end up selling them on. But yeah, as I said, just would want them to take on the whole of the club. Just don't think it's a good look for the game in this country, unfortunately. But look, that's probably enough on the A-Leagues. There's a bit of other player movement, a few of the clubs with players. We're obviously going to do a big A-League preview as we get closer to the start of the season as well. The Australia Cup round of 32 draw is out, so those games will be coming up shortly as well. So this off-season will be hopefully turning around sooner rather than later. But let's leave the A-League there for the moment, mate, because all focus on the World Cup. The Socceroos playing Egypt early on Saturday morning next week. So plenty to get excited about.
Yeah, it should break hopefully some more record numbers, and we know those record numbers were out, and a lot of hotspots have been set up for this, and another early start at 4 a.m. But yeah, let's just hope for the benefit of the game that the boys can put in a magnificent performance. We're right behind you, and we wish you all the best, Tony Vovic and his group. All the best for Saturday morning, and let's hope next week when we talk, Chief, we're talking about our round of 16 opponents because that would be something to look forward to and keep the momentum going and keep us alive because the longer we're alive, Chief, the longer the game and the better benefits it is for everybody. So yeah, fingers crossed, Socceroos, and there, let's go out with a mindset and go after them. So I think we can get Egypt.
Absolutely, mate. Well said. Thank you for everyone who sent in some comments and questions for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Mopper, for your time. Let's get excited about the Socceroos versus Egypt next Saturday. But in the meantime, enjoy your football.
All the best.